Thank you for downloading this audio title, published by thoughtaudio.com.
The Life of the Honorable William F. Cody, known as Buffalo Bill, the famous hunter, scout, and guide, an autobiography written by myself in 1879. Narrated by Michael Scott as Buffalo Bill Cody. Produced by thoughtaudio.com. Adventures on the Overland Road. As the warm days of summer approached, I longed for the cool air of the mountains, and to the mountains I determined to go. After engaging a man to take care of the farm, I proceeded to Leavenworth, and there met my old wagon master and friend, Lewis Simpson, who was fitting out a train at Atchison and loading it with supplies for the Overland Stage Company, of which Mr. Russell, my old employer, was one of the proprietors. Simpson was going with his train to Fort Laramie and points further west. "Come along with me, Billy," he said. "I'll give you a good layout. I want you with me." "I don't know that I would like to go as far west as that again," replied I. "But I do want to ride the Pony Express once more. There's some life in that." "Yes, that's so, but it will soon shake the life out of you," he said. "However, if that's what you've got on your mind, set on. You had better come to Atchison with me and see Mr. Russell, who I'm pretty certain will give you a situation." I replied that I would do that. I then went home and informed my mother of my intention, and as her health was very poor, I had great difficulty in obtaining her consent. I finally convinced her that as I was of no use on the farm, it would be better and more profitable for me to return to the plains. So after giving her all the money I had earned by trapping, I bade her goodbye and set out for Atchison. I met Mr. Russell there and asked him for employment as a Pony Express rider. He gave me a letter to Mr. Slade, who was then the stage agent for the division extending from Julesburg to Rocky Ridge. Slade had his headquarters at Horseshoe Station, 36 miles west of Fort Laramie, and I made the trip thither in company with Mr. Simpson and his train. Almost the very first person I saw after dismounting from my horse was Slade. I walked up to him and presented Mr. Russell's letter, which he hastily opened and read. With a sweeping glance of his eyes, he took my measure from head to foot, and then said, "My boy, you are too young for a Pony Express rider. It takes men for that business." "I rode 2 months last year on Bill Trotter's division, sir, and filled the bill then, and I think I am better able to ride now," said I. "What? Are you the boy that was riding there and was called the youngest rider on the road?" "I am that same boy," I replied, confident that everything was now all right for me. "I've heard of you before. You're a year or so older now, and I think you can stand it. I'll give you a trial anyhow, and if you weaken, you can come back to Horseshoe Station and tend stock." That ended our first interview. The next day, he assigned me to duty on the road from Red Butts to the North Platte, to the 3 crossings of the Sweetwater, a distance of 76 miles. And I began riding at once. It was a long piece of road, but I was equal to the undertaking, and soon afterwards had an opportunity to exhibit my power of endurance as a Pony Express rider. One day, when I galloped into 3 Crossings, my home station, I found that the rider who was expected to take my trip out on my arrival had gotten into a drunken row the night before and had been killed, and that there was no one to fill his place. I did not hesitate for a moment to undertake an extra ride of 85 miles to Rocky Ridge, and I arrived at the latter place on time. I then turned back and rode to Redbud's, my starting place, accomplishing on the round trip a distance of 322 miles. Slade heard of this feat of mine, and one day, as he was passing on a coach, he sang out to me, "My boy, you're a brick, and no mistake." That was a good run you made when you rode your own and Miller's routes, and I'll see that you get extra pay for it. Slade, although rough at times, and always a dangerous character, having killed many a man, was always kind to me. During the 2 years that I worked for him as a Pony Express rider and stage driver, he never spoke an angry word to me. As I was leaving Horse Creek one day, a party of 15 Indians jumped me in a sand ravine about a mile west of the station. They fired at me repeatedly, but missed their mark. I was mounted on a roan California horse, the fleetest steed I had. Putting spurs and whips to him and flying flat on his back, I kept straight on for Sweetwater Bridge, 11 miles distant, instead of trying to turn back to Horse Creek. The Indians came on in hot pursuit, but my horse soon got away from them and ran into the station 2 miles ahead of them. The stock tender had been killed there that morning, and all the stock had been driven off by the Indians, and I was therefore unable to change horses. I continued on to Plout Station, 12 miles further, thus making 24 miles straight run with one horse. I told the people at Plout's what had happened at Sweetwater Bridge, and with a fresh horse went on and finished the trip without any further adventure. About the middle of September, the Indians became very troublesome on the line of the stage road along Sweetwater. Between Split Rock and Three Crossings, they robbed a stage, killed the driver and 2 passengers, and badly wounded Lieutenant Flowers, the assistant division agent. The red-skinned thieves also drove off the stock from different stations, and were continually lying in wait for the passing stages and Pony Express riders, so that we had to take many desperate chances in running the gauntlet. The Indians had now become so bad and had stolen so much stock that it was decided to stop the Pony Express for at least 6 weeks, and to run the stages but occasionally during that period. In fact, it would have been almost impossible to run the enterprise much longer without restocking the line. While we were thus nearly all lying idle, a party was organized to go out and search for stolen stock. The party was composed of stage drivers, express riders, stock tenders, and ranchmen, 40 of them altogether, and they were well armed and well mounted. They were mostly men who had undergone all kinds of hardships and braved every danger, and they were ready and anxious to tackle any number of Indians. While Bill, who had been driving stage on the road and had recently come down to our division, was elected captain of the company. It was supposed that the stolen stock had been taken to the head of the Powder River and vicinity, and the party, of which I was a member, started out for that section in high hopes of success. 20 miles out from Sweetwater Bridge, at the head of Horse Creek, we found an Indian trail running north towards Powder River, and we could see by the tracks that most of the horses had been recently shod and were undoubtedly our stolen stage stock. Pushing rapidly forward, we followed this trail to Powder River, then down this stream to within about 40 miles of the spot where Old Fort Reno now stands. Here, the trail took a more westerly course along the foot of the mountains, leading eventually to Crazy Woman's Fork, a tributary of Powder River. At this point, we discovered that the party whom we were trailing had been joined by another band of Indians, and judging from the fresh appearance of the trail, the united body could not have left this spot more than 24 hours before. Being aware that we were now in the heart of hostile country, and that we might at any moment find more Indians than we had lost, we advanced with more caution than usual and kept a sharp lookout. As we were approaching Clear Creek, another tributary of Powder River, we discovered Indians on the opposite side of the creek, some 3 miles distant. At least, we saw horses grazing, which was a sure sign that there were Indians there. The Indians, thinking themselves in comparative safety, never before having been followed so far into their own country by white men, had neglected to put out any scouts. They had no idea that there were any white men in that part of the country. We got the lay of their camp, and then held a council to consider and mature a plan for capturing it. We knew full well that the Indians would outnumber us at least 3-1, and perhaps more. Upon the advice and suggestion of Wild Bill, it was finally decided that we should wait until it was nearly dark, and then, after creeping as close to them as possible, make a dash through their camp, open a general fire on them, and stampede the horses. This plan, at the proper time, was most successfully executed. The dash upon the enemy was a complete surprise to them. They were so overcome with astonishment that they did not know what to make of it. We could not have astonished them any more if we had dropped down into their camp from the clouds. They did not recover from the surprise of the sudden charge until after we had ridden pell-mell through their camp and got away with our horses as well as theirs. We at once circled the horses around towards the south, and after getting them on the south side of Clear Creek, some 20 of our men, just as the darkness was coming on, rode back and gave the Indians a few parting shots. We then took up our line of march for Sweetwater Bridge, where we arrived 4 days afterwards with all of our own horses and about 100 captured Indian ponies. The expedition had proved a grand success, and the event was celebrated in the usual manner by a grand spree. The only store at Sweetwater Bridge did a Russian business for several days. The returned stock hunters drank and gambled and fought. The Indian ponies, which had been distributed among the captors, passed from hand to hand at almost every deal of the cards. There seemed to be no limit to the rioting and carousing. Revelry reigned supreme. On the third day of the orgy, Slade, who had heard the news, came up to the bridge and took a hand in the fun, as it was called. To some variation and excitement to the occasion, Slade got into a quarrel with the stage driver and shot him, killing him almost instantly. The boys became so elevated over their success against the Indians that most of them were in favor of going back and cleaning out the whole Indian race. One old driver especially, Dan Smith, was eager to open a war on all the hostile nations, and had the drinking been continued another week, he certainly would have undertaken the job, single-handed and alone. The spree finally came to an end. The men sobered down and abandoned the idea of again invading the hostile country. The recovered horses were replaced on the road, and the stages and Pony Express were again running on time. Slade, having taken a great fancy to me, said, "Billy, I want you to come down to my headquarters, and I'll make you a sort of a supernumerary rider, and send you out only when it is necessary. I accepted the offer and went with him down to Horseshoe, where I had a comparative